It's your boy John, coming at you with a new segment which we're going to do once a week called ComicsWriterPro Secrets. I'm going to go in depth into what it takes to write quality fiction. It's one thing to just put a bunch of art on a page, but it's another thing entirely to tell a compelling story that people will care about. The first thing I want to talk about is something that has been lost in the comic industry for a long time. It's called telling a complete story in an issue. Writers, when did this start? It really started in the early 90s, and that's when comics really started to go downhill. And they changed the format to care more about the graphic novel and its full content than it did to care about the individual issues. Which is fine if you just put out a graphic novel. Then if you just put out a graphic novel by itself, like my book Flying Sparks right here, you can get a full story in here, and that's fine. But when you put out issues and you expect people to wait monthly, and you're only got 22 pages, and you start out a concept and you just leave it on hold or whatnot for a month, it's tough to get back into the story without rereading that first issue. And then as the issues drag on, and most of these series that people do these days are 6 issues, you lose something there. And then especially with the middle issues, you just have this content that just drags out. It doesn't seem to help the story in any event. And it doesn't really add much to the actual overall story. A lot of times you can skip issues 4 and 5 of a 6-issue series and really not miss much and just get into the ending for the climax there for whatever the change is in the storyline. But if you go back to the 80s, if you go back to the 70s, every issue, even if it was a serialized storyline, and Flying Sparks is a serialized storyline, this is your classic comic book story. It's a classic book where each issue has its own storyline that is self-contained. You'll have a villain and something happening, and then a change and a climactic arc in every single issue of this book, just like issues had back in the day. And I did that because I thought about releasing this as individual issues at the time. Plus, I really wanted to capture that authentic superhero vibe that you used to get from Marvel and DC. But every single one of those books had a beginning, middle, and end. Usually it had a page or two of an intro to a storyline, and then it went into a splash page where they'd have the credits. And then it would launch into, the main character and what's going on and build up to a climax. They'd have the big epic superhero fight, and then you'd have an ending, or you'd have something that continues into the next issue that builds from that. And that continuation would start its own arc and just kind of be a teaser for the next one. And that's what you really want to accomplish in an issue, because you want to have the cliffhanger, right? Flying Sparks Volume 1 ends on a cliffhanger, but the cliffhanger is not something that happens in issue. It's not that issue 3 does not resolve. Issue 3 does resolve. The issue 3 is about a theft, and the theft happens. Both of our heroes deal with the theft, and then they recoup at the end of it. And then these gentlemen show up and say, "Okay, Johnny, we're going to come take you down." And it's a promise to the reader that I'm going to come out with a volume 2 in a timely fashion, and then we're going to continue this overarching storyline that's building. But every issue needs to have that punch. It needs to have the beginning, middle, and end if you want to have a compelling story. And if you don't have that, you really shouldn't be telling your book in issue form. You should wait until you get the full graphic novel done and do it that way. That's just standard storytelling 101, because you want to give the readers a fulfilled feeling that they actually had something worthwhile, that something transpired within there that changed the characters, that made the plot happen, that resolved what they were interested in, and still yet leaves them wanting more. That is the essence of serialized storytelling, and that's the best advice I could give to somebody is make sure, especially if you're an indie guy and you're doing your first comic or your second comic or whatnot, you really want to tell a complete story, because you don't know how well it's going to fund, if you're going to do it again. You don't just want to leave some open-ended thing for everybody to just kind of forget about, because by the time your next book rolls around, you might not have people who are remembering this. That's another reason I try to come out with these pretty regularly. But at the same time, I want to give everybody a complete story every time they roll into a volume and get that. And so that is my advice for the day. We're going to talk into how to add depth characters, I believe, in the next installment of Comics Writer Pro Secrets. I will take your questions. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will try to get to them and do an installment on the channel as best I can for you, in order to sort of demystify the craft of storytelling for everybody. You might want to check out my live stream. It was about a week ago now, where I actually went from scratch to an idea and to an outline of a comic book. It was a pretty good live stream and pretty useful for seeing my process in that regard, but we'll do some videos about that without the interruptions of a live stream as well, just to kind of help you guys out here. So welcome, thank you so much for checking out Comics Writer Pro Secrets on the Diversity and Comics channel. We will be back soon, and don't forget to back Flying Sparks today on Indiegogo, and check out the best indie superhero comic out there right now. See you.